past. I swear to God, everybody trying to convince us that we need to accept the bare minimum needs to go somewhere. No.
Welcome back, family. I am Thatbaldbrutha, and this is the Say What I Said show. Recently on the Madame Noir channel, Miss Lorèl hosted a panel interview called Listen to Black Women, where she invited Elle Varner, Eboni K Williams, and Melyssa Ford to come up, and they had quite a few things to say about a Black woman's worth, modern dating, and relationships. Let's get into it.
I think the main thing I've learned from this, y'all, is people really want Black women to be happy with anything. What people really want Black women to understand is that we are to be accepting of our positioning as the least desirable in society. We should get the memo that nobody really wants a Black woman. Thus, if anybody was to find themselves willing to take up with us, we should be happy, we should be grateful, and we should shut up about it. If you were to push back on that and insist upon a value system, insist upon a criteria, insist upon just a standard into which we want to operate romantically, we are demonized, we are seen as ungrateful, and eventually we become the ungrateful, angry Black woman.
So right here, Ms. Williams talks about having standards. Now, there's nothing wrong with having standards. I think men and women alike should have standards when it comes to relationships. I think the pushback on this talking point comes from the question, are your standards realistic? And I definitely don't support the idea that Black women should take whatever they can get. Just because you adjust your standards doesn't mean you're taking the lowest person on the totem pole. It just simply means you're opening yourself up to the possibility that maybe the person you're looking for is not in the 1% and maybe in a different group. Let me know in the comments below if you believe that the standards that Black women have are unrealistic.
I believe it was Tyler Perry who came on the flip side and basically said that we need to start looking at men that don't make as much, or the stay-at-home dads, and considering them.
I think his exact thing was, I mean, if he can contribute to, the light bill, then
the light bill,
but but he makes you happy in all other areas, then I mean.
Now, we recently covered that interview between Crystal Renee Hazlett and Tyler Perry on her show called Keep It Positive, Sweetie, where he made the comment about meeting a woman at her worth.
Meet me at my worth. And we were all like, wow.
Yeah.
That's it.
And anybody who can't do that, that doesn't mean they're not worthy of you. That means that they need to either attempt, try, learn, find out enough about you to be able to figure out what that is.
Yes.
And that's not money, because if that man works at whatever job and is a good man and is good to you and honors the house and honors his wife and does what he can, that's not somebody who's beneath you. That's somebody who came to love you at your worth. And as long as he's secure in himself to know that, yep, she makes most of the money, all I can pay is the light bill, as long as she's comfortable enough to say, I'm gonna cover the mortgage and all the other stuff, that is fine.
Yeah.
And what he was referring to, while he did mention a man who pays the electric bill, the full context wasn't provided by Ms. Ford. What he said was, don't make money the focal point. He didn't say eliminate money from the conversation. He just said, don't make it the focal point. That you should instead not just focus on the money, but focus on how the person treats you.
Is the assumption that Black women's only option is to date Black men. I understand wanting to be race loyal. I understand wanting to, if you're a Black woman, you want to marry a Black man, you want to have Black children. I totally get it. But the reality of the situation is that I feel like, and I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody, I feel like Black men don't really want to have the conversation that Black women actually do have more options that are available to them than are ever kind of proposed. But if you are willing to date outside your race, the options open up.
As somebody who has been very open and transparent about my dating within and beyond Black men, I just want to say that that's not necessarily the savior complex that people think. Unfortunately, because I think when I have this conversation with Black women who have never dated outside of Black men, they often have a romanticized fantasy ideal about what that is, kind of like non-Black men will save us. And you will still have many of the same perils because there are differences culturally, but men are men.
There's a whole movement called Passport Bro.
This is what I mean.
I mean, it goes to Ebony's point about Black women being fed the narrative that you got to take what you can get, that you're the lowest on the totem pole in terms of attractiveness, and that Black men are actively saying, I do not want a Black woman.
Now, what I like about this clip is that somebody finally addressed the elephant in the room. For a long time, it's been a belief system that if you date outside the Black race, somehow you're going to be saved, there won't be no problems, and it'll be all kumbaya and peaches and cream all the way through the rest of your life, and you don't have to worry about anything. But the harsh reality of it is that crazy doesn't know color. It doesn't matter where you're from or what race you belong to. People are still going to be people regardless. There's no less amount of narcissists and abusers and cheaters across the fence than there are within your own backyard. And the belief that by dating outside your race, things are going to miraculously change into your favor is just a ridiculous idea. And the same goes for this whole passport bro movement that's happening right now. Going across the pond, trying to find a wife doesn't necessarily guarantee that your life's going to be better off either. There have been quite a few stories as of late where individuals who've gone to different countries looking for love have found themselves on the short end of a stick, and sometimes may have been just flat out deleted because of it. There is no one way to guarantee that you're not going to have any kind of drama in a relationship. Now, with that said, you can date who you want to date. There's nothing wrong with that. No one's saying you have to keep it in the black race and not. I don't get into all that. At the end of the day, you love who you love. If the person treats you well, takes care of you the way you'll want to be taken care of, looks out for you, is really your person, it shouldn't matter what color or race they are. Be happy and live your life. So what do you think about that? Do the divestors and passport bros have a valid reason behind their logic? Let me know in the comments below.
And I posed the question about, the CEO of Xerox. Why should she have to date a bus driver? Why is this even a part of the conversation? First of all, the two of them probably have very little in common, not even in terms of them personally, but their lives and their lifestyles and that sort of thing. And what's called into question when it comes to trying to date somebody who's of a different status than where you are, you're going to encounter problems that are going to result in microaggressions. Just like the fissures are going to kind of show up in the relationship, but it's going to be a lot of unsaid things.
Insecurities,
you know what I'm saying? Listen, in a perfect world, Miss CEO of Xerox, she falls in love with a bus driver and everything works out well. But in reality, probably not.
You've been dating all these men that are, as out of your words, the top earners, 1%, however you want to word it, and you haven't had any success with them. They've all been relationships that ended badly. If I'm dating women and all the women I date, nothing works, at some point I got to say, well, maybe I'm looking at the wrong women. And then comes the second piece, is looking at myself and saying, well, what's going on with me? See, that's the one thing I find interesting about this whole conversation, that there was no point in time was there a discussion about, oh, I need to work on me. It was always about everybody else being the problem and not focusing on what I need to be doing as an individual to get myself right mentally so that I can attract the right people and have a long-lasting relationship. Instead, I want to point the finger and say, well, it's their fault because they're not making enough money, they're not doing their part as a man, and blah, blah, blah. But overlooking the fact of the role that you play in those relationships.
And so when I was talking about Miss CEO of Xerox, I'm saying, what is the problem with a woman of that stature? The amount of time that she's invested, not into her, schooling, but her profession, into her life, building herself up. Why shouldn't she feel like she should be equally yoked? Why is that a problem?
Yeah.
Now talking about Miss Ford's example of the lady at Xerox who's dating a man who's not making the same money as she is, and there's inherent resentment. Yes, you're right. You're absolutely correct. Most men are going to feel a way about being with a woman who makes more money than them. I would argue that the resentment that she's experiencing is merely a projection of the resentment that the man has for himself. He's angry at the fact that he was likely raised and told that he is supposed to be the provider, he's supposed to be the protector, and how can he lead a house if he's not making enough money, making more money than his wife or his significant other? And because she is doing better than him, he is now feeling a way about it and taking that internal frustration with himself out on her. That doesn't make it right, doesn't make it okay, but I just want you to understand that's likely where it's coming from.
Now, what do y'all think about this though, when the man does work and then he's never there?
Well, personally, I'm fine with it because the Bible says you're supposed to provide. But that's just That's me. I believe in provision. My husband can't be up in my face, sitting on the couch with me watching Netflix if I need somebody to send these kids to private school. Someone cannot be taking care of your lived expenses and be up in your face. So which one do you value more?
So basically what she's saying is that a man is not allowed to enjoy the fruits of his labor. He's just supposed to be a workhorse and work 24/7 to make sure you good and never experience any of his own rewards for the work he's done. Never take a vacation, never take a day off, never sit down and rest. That doesn't make any sense. It's not realistic. You're not going to attract anybody by saying, I don't want you around the house. I only need you around because you're working. When a man's not getting his needs satisfied at home, when he's being pushed away by his wife because she's so focused on the materialistic side of things and not concerned with his feelings, where do you think that's going to land you? How do you think that's going to play out? You think it's going to lead to a successful relationship? Not at all. It's going to lead right to divorce, breakup, separation, what have you. It's going to lead him to someone else's arms because there's always going to be somebody else that's going to do what you won't do. Where you fall short, someone's going to pick it up.
No, most of us, contrary to popular belief, don't just want a man. We want the man that we want. We want a man that we desire. We want a man that we're actually attracted to, physically, emotionally, psychologically, intellectually. And if you're not that, you know what I mean?
A whole lot right nowadays.
It is a lot to ask.
It's not a lot to ask.
I actually think it is.
No, I swear to God, everybody trying to convince us that we need to accept the bare minimum needs to go somewhere. No, that is not a lot to ask. I swear to God, the bar's in hell.
So again, this whole conversation seems to be centering around women dating the top 1% of men. And why can't a CEO of Xerox decide she don't want to date nobody less than that? She can decide to date who she wants. But she has to understand if there's not enough men to go around, she's going to be short. If you're going to ignore the bulk of the population because you want to focus on a small percentage, good luck to you. You can't complain when you have nothing to show for it. Not all men desire a woman to follow behind them and be at their beck and call. Most of us out here are concerned about having a woman who has character. See, the argument that we keep getting tied up into is that, well, men don't look at money. No, we don't. Most men don't consider a woman's income when deciding whether or not they're going to get with her. We're thinking about looks, personality, and how she treats us. Money is part of the conversation in the latter part of it, but it's not the primary focus. We don't lead with, what do you do for a living? That's not our concern. We lead with, who are you? What's your character like? What are your values? Most men also know that it doesn't matter what you do. Even as the man, even if you're making as much money as I'm making, I'm still expected to protect and provide. Whether she works for Taco Bell or she works for Xerox, we still are expected to pick it up and handle it. Now, when you talk about provision, it goes beyond just about money. Yes, money is a factor in provision, but there's also quality time. There's also emotional support. There's also affection. Do you have good times together? Are you hanging out? Are you dating? Are you really enjoying each other's presence? Are you getting to know each other?
Real boss men, they do not desire a financial or an intellectual equal. They are not attracted to it. I'm telling y'all the truth. They did not go to law school, Lorèl, so they could end up with a peer. They went to law school, they went to medical school, they went to Harvard MBA so that they could be the dominant, so that they could run the shop.
With that truth that you just gave us, then where does that leave you? You're telling me that the men that you desire, the men that you want, don't want you. You said that. What options do you have left? To just remain single for the rest of your life and hope that one of these guys come to their senses? Or you're going to continue to overlook men who may not be in that 1% group that could treat you better than any man you've ever been with thus far? Another funny thing about this conversation that I have not heard yet, where do you factor into the equation of your relationships? Because you can't tell me that every time there was a breakup, it was their fault. That you had nothing to do with it. You were a perfect girlfriend, perfect mate the whole time, and they are the ones that caused everything to fall off. That I think that's where the conversation needs to start for both men and women in relationships, especially. If you're not right emotionally, you're not going to be right for somebody else. Because believe it or not, whether you like it or not, we are all the common denominator in every relationship. So wherever you go, the issues you have, psychological, trauma, all that stuff you deal with personally, insecurities, paranoia, and fears, that's still with you. And if you don't address that properly, you're not going to find what you're looking for, because we attract oftentimes who we are. You have to understand that there's work to be done inside. Deal with your own insecurities, your own issues, if it's your goal to be with somebody else. You're not going to attract anybody when you have nothing, but your shoulders are weighted down with all kinds of emotional and mental drama. Therapy is a thing, and I know I keep pushing that, but it needs to be said. A lot of the problems that we deal with in relationships is because the people involved have not taken care of their issues. They have not bothered to even try to address the traumas that they have faced. And those issues and traumas keep creeping back up into the relationships and causing problems. And until we sit back and really take a serious look and address them, we're going to keep bumping our head against the wall and finding ourselves single when we shouldn't be. Ultimately, it comes down to this. Standards are great. You have to decide what matters to you, right? But if your standards are keeping you single, then maybe it's time for you to reevaluate those standards. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts about the conversation. And if you want to continue the discussion, check out the links over here, and I'll see you there.